Welcome to a quiet journey through the darker corners of the wizarding world. Tonight, we're slowing everything down and walking softly into the shadows where forbidden magic lives. We'll explore ancient curses, the origins of fearsome creatures, and the secrets behind spells wizards were never meant to cast. There's nothing loud here, nothing rushed, just calm storytelling, drifting through legends of Horcruxes, Dementors, and the mysteries surrounding the killing curse. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and let the darkest magic of the wizarding world unfold at a peaceful pace as you fall asleep.
Mythical origins. The story of the Deathly Hallows begins with the tale of the three brothers, a wizarding legend recorded in the Tales of Beedle the Bard. According to the story, three brothers from the Peverell family once came to a river too dangerous to cross. Instead of drowning, they conjured a bridge with their magic. Death felt cheated of three victims and appeared before them. Rather than punishing them, he pretended to congratulate their cleverness and offered each a gift. The eldest brother, Antioch Peverell, asked for a wand more powerful than any other. Death created the Elder Wand, carved from elderwood with a core of thestral hair. This wand could supposedly never be beaten in a duel. Antioch took it, confident it made him invincible. The second brother, Cadmus Peverell, asked for a way to bring back someone he loved from the dead. Death picked up a stone from the riverbank and gave it to him. This was the Resurrection Stone, which could call back the shades of the dead. These returned figures were not truly alive, but rather echoes of their former selves. The third brother, Ignotus Peverell, asked for a way to escape death entirely. Death handed him his own Cloak of Invisibility. With it, Ignotus could hide from death and live a full life free from pursuit. The tale ends with sorrow for the first two brothers. Antioch boasted about his wand's power, but while he slept, another wizard stole it and ended his life. Cadmus, overcome with grief, turned away from the world of the living after seeing his beloved so changed. Only Ignotus lived to an old age, removing his cloak when the time came and greeting death willingly as an old friend. The legend claims that whoever unites the Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Invisibility Cloak becomes the master of death, holding dominion over life itself. Historical reality. Although the story describes Death personally creating the Hallows, Albus Dumbledore offered a more grounded interpretation. He explained that the Peverell brothers were not literally recipients of gifts from Death, but instead exceptionally skilled wizards who invented three powerful magical objects. The legend of Death's involvement likely grew over time as a way to dramatize their extraordinary abilities. Each Hallows' qualities support this interpretation. The Elder Wand, while extraordinarily powerful, still functions like any wand and can be passed through defeat in combat. The Resurrection Stone behaves like other enchanted artifacts by binding a magical effect to a physical object, though its ability is unique. The Invisibility Cloak, unlike other cloaks that wear out or only partially conceal, is unusually perfect and enduring because it was crafted with rare advanced magic. The wizarding world preserved the tale as myth, but traces of the Hallows remained in history. The Peverell name appears in old records, including on a gravestone in Godric's Hollow, confirming their existence as real people. The Hallows' passage through time, often hidden within family lines or emerging in the possession of dark wizards, supports the view that these were human creations rather than supernatural gifts. The Elder Wand's bloody history. The Elder Wand was first wielded by Antioch Peverell, but it left the family immediately after his death. Antioch was murdered in his sleep by another wizard who wanted the wand for himself. Because wands transfer allegiance when their masters are defeated or killed, the killer became the rightful owner. This set a precedent. The Elder Wand's ownership would almost always change hands through violence. Over the centuries, the Elder Wand gained a reputation as the most dangerous wand in existence. Historical records list several of its wielders. Emeric the Evil, a fearsome sorcerer in medieval England, used it for conquest before being killed in a duel by Egbert the Egregious. Later, a dark wizard named Godelo studied the wand and used it to compose Magic Mosta Evil, one of the earliest guides to the dark arts. His son, Hereward, locked him in an attic to die in order to claim the wand. In the 18th century, Barnabas Deverell became infamous for his reign of terror using the Elder Wand, before being slain by Loxias, who then renamed it the Death Stick. By the late 19th century, the wand was in the possession of the wand maker Grigorovich. He studied it to try and replicate its power, but failed. A young Gellert Grindelwald stole it directly from Grigorovich's workshop, becoming its master. Grindelwald then began his rise to power, using the wand in duels and battles as he sought wizarding domination. Albus Dumbledore eventually confronted Grindelwald in a duel that became one of the most famous in magical history. Dumbledore defeated him, gaining mastery of the Elder Wand. For decades afterward, Dumbledore wielded it but resisted abusing its power, although he admitted to Harry later that the temptation was always present. The Elder Wand's allegiance shifted again at the end of Dumbledore's life. Draco Malfoy disarmed Dumbledore during the confrontation at the Astronomy Tower, unintentionally becoming its master. When Harry later defeated Draco, the wand's loyalty passed to him. Voldemort, unaware of this transfer, stole the wand from Dumbledore's tomb and attempted to use it, but the wand refused to kill its true master. In their final battle, the Elder Wand spell rebounded and destroyed Voldemort. After the war, Harry used the Elder Wand's unmatched power once, repairing his own broken wand. He then destroyed the Elder Wand to end its bloody history and prevent anyone else from seeking it. The Resurrection Stone's journey. Cadmus used the stone to summon the woman he loved, but she returned as a sorrowful, ghost-like figure. Unable to bear the divide between them, Cadmus eventually chose to leave the living world behind. After his passing, the stone remained in the Peverell family line as an heirloom. Over time, the stone was set into a ring. This ring was passed down through generations until it came into the possession of the Gaunt family, direct descendants of Cadmus Peverell. The Gaunts were poor, but they treasured the ring as proof of their pure-blood heritage. By this stage, the family no longer remembered the true magical properties of the stone. Marvolo Gaunt eventually gave the ring to his son, Morphin. When Tom Riddle visited the Gaunt home as a teenager, he murdered his father and grandparents, then stole the ring from Morphin. By then calling himself Lord Voldemort, he turned the ring into one of his Horcruxes, embedding a fragment of his soul inside it. To protect the Horcrux, he placed powerful curses and enchantments around it and hid it in the Gaunt shack. Albus Dumbledore later discovered the ring while investigating Voldemort's Horcruxes. Realizing it contained the Resurrection Stone, Dumbledore's old fascination with the Hallows overcame his caution. He placed the ring on his finger, forgetting it was also cursed. The curse spread quickly through his hand and would have killed him within hours, if not slowed by Severus Snape. Even so, Dumbledore was left with only a year to live. Before his death, Dumbledore destroyed the Horcrux within the ring using the Sword of Gryffindor. He then hid the Resurrection Stone inside the first golden snitch Harry Potter ever caught, leaving it to Harry in his will. The snitch bore the inscription, "I open at the close." During the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry realized the clue meant the snitch would open when he accepted his own death. As he prepared to face Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, he spoke the words, and the snitch revealed the stone. Harry used it to summon the shades of his parents, Sirius Black and Remus Lupin, for comfort before walking to his fate. Afterward, he dropped the stone in the forest, where it was trampled into the earth by centaurs during the battle and lost forever. The Invisibility Cloak's lineage. The Invisibility Cloak was the gift given to Ignotus Peverell. Unlike the Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone, which led to the destruction of their original owners, the cloak fulfilled its purpose perfectly. It allowed Ignotus to live a long life hidden from death until he chose to meet it willingly. When his time came, he removed the cloak, passed it to his son, and greeted death as an equal. The cloak remained in the Peverell family line for many generations. Eventually, the male heirs of Ignotus died out, and the cloak was passed through daughters until it entered the Potter family by marriage. Hardwin Potter married Iolanthe Peverell, and from that point, the cloak became a treasured Potter heirloom. By the 20th century, the cloak had been inherited by Fleamont Potter and then his son, James Potter. James used it frequently during his time at Hogwarts, both for mischief and for concealment. Albus Dumbledore, recognizing the cloak's unusual perfection, asked to examine it, confirming to himself that it was one of the Deathly Hallows. After James Potter's death in 1981, Dumbledore kept the cloak in his possession. 10 years later, when James's son Harry came to Hogwarts, Dumbledore returned the cloak to him anonymously as a Christmas gift. From that point on, Harry used the cloak throughout his time at school, whether sneaking into the restricted section, escaping detection, or exploring Hogwarts. The cloak proved invaluable in many critical moments. Harry used it to survive encounters with Snape, Umbridge, and Death Eaters. During the Battle of Hogwarts, it helped him evade enemies and walk unnoticed to the Forbidden Forest to face Voldemort. Unlike the Elder Wand and Resurrection Stone, the cloak never failed its purpose and never harmed its user. After the war, the cloak remained in Harry's possession. Unlike the other Hallows, it was neither destroyed nor lost. Harry eventually passed it down to his children, ensuring it remained a family heirloom in the Potter line, just as Ignotus had intended. Connections between families. The Deathly Hallows did more than shape wizarding history through power and legend. They also revealed hidden connections between the central figures of the story. Both Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort descended from the Peverell brothers, meaning they were distant relatives. Harry was a descendant of Ignotus Peverell, the original owner of the Invisibility Cloak. The cloak passed through Ignotus's heirs for centuries until it reached the Potter family. Voldemort was a descendant of Cadmus Peverell through the Gaunt family. This bloodline connection showed that Harry and Voldemort were linked not only by prophecy, but also by ancestry. The rivalry between them was a continuation of the Peverell legacy. Two branches of the same family, one tied to humility and survival, the other to arrogance and destruction. The symbolism of the brothers echoed in the lives of the story's key characters. Voldemort mirrored Antioch Peverell, destroyed by his hunger for power. Severus Snape reflected Cadmus, consumed by love and loss. Harry embodied Ignotus, who accepted mortality and used his gift wisely. Together, these parallels reinforce the idea that the Deathly Hallows were not just objects, but lessons in how wizards chose to confront life and death. Why Harry survived the forest? A popular belief is that Harry Potter survived Voldemort's killing curse in the Forbidden Forest because he had united the three Deathly Hallows, making him the so-called Master of Death. This interpretation fits the legend, but it is not the real explanation given in the books. The true reason Harry lived was the continuing power of his mother's sacrifice. When Lily Potter gave her life to protect her son, she created an ancient magical shield that prevented Voldemort from killing him outright. This protection resided in Harry's blood as long as he lived under the care of Petunia Dursley, Lily's sister, who shared her bloodline. By the time Harry turned 17, the spell should have ended, but Voldemort's own actions extended it. When he used Harry's blood in the ritual that restored his body during the events of the Goblet of Fire, Voldemort unintentionally anchored Lily's protection inside himself. Dumbledore explained that as long as Voldemort carried Harry's blood within his veins, Harry's life could not be completely taken from him. This meant that when Voldemort struck Harry with the killing curse in the forest, the spell destroyed the fragment of Voldemort's soul inside Harry rather than Harry himself. Harry entered a limbo-like state where he met Dumbledore at King's Cross before returning to life. Therefore, Harry's survival was not due to mastery of the Hallows, but to the unique continuation of Lily's enchantment. Voldemort's arrogance in using Harry's blood bound their fates together in a way he never understood, ensuring that Harry would endure the curse meant to kill him. The final fate of the Hallows. By the end of the Second Wizarding War, each of the three Hallows reached a final resting point that reflected its nature. The Deathly Hallows, once united, were separated once more. One was lost, one was inherited, and one was destroyed. Their stories closed with Harry's choice to reject their combined power, showing that true mastery of death came not from possession of magical objects, but from accepting mortality itself. But the story of the Hallows is only one chapter in the wizarding world's struggle with power, death, and destiny. Beyond these three objects, the entire wizarding community was torn apart by conflict not once, but three separate times. The basic nature of Dementors. Dementors are tall, wraith-like creatures that stand around 3 meters in height. They are usually described as cloaked figures with rotting, gray, scabby skin beneath their hoods. Their skeletal hands and decayed faces are rarely seen, and their presence is defined more by the atmosphere they create than by their physical appearance. The Ministry of Magic classifies Dementors as non-beings, which means they are not considered living creatures in the usual biological sense. Instead, they are a form of spirit-like apparition created from human emotion. This classification places them apart from magical beasts such as dragons or centaurs. They are entities formed from darkness and despair, making them almost impossible to destroy through conventional magical means. The defining ability of Dementors is their capacity to drain happiness, hope, and positive memories from anyone nearby. When a Dementor approaches, the air becomes colder, light diminishes, and those in its vicinity feel overwhelming despair. Victims often relive their most painful memories while being stripped of their joyful ones. Even Muggles, who cannot see Dementors, can feel the draining effect, often describing it as sudden chills and inexplicable dread. The most feared act of a Dementor is the Dementor's kiss. This process involves the Dementor clamping its decayed mouth onto its victim and sucking out the soul. The body remains alive in the biological sense, but without a soul, the person is left as an empty shell with no consciousness, personality, or possibility of recovery. This fate is considered worse than death in the wizarding world. The symbolic meaning of Dementors. Dementors were originally conceived by J.K. Rowling as a representation of depression. Rowling has described them as personifications of the emptiness, hopelessness, and emotional numbness that she experienced during her own struggles. This design gives Dementors a deeper symbolic meaning beyond their role as dark creatures in the wizarding world. The chilling cold, darkness, and overwhelming fear that accompany Dementors are metaphors for the suffocating nature of severe depression. This connection between Dementors and depression is also reflected in the Patronus charm, which is the only effective defense against them. A Patronus requires the caster to focus on their strongest positive memory in order to summon a force of light that repels the Dementor. This illustrates the idea that hope, happiness, and resilience are the only ways to push back against despair. The discovery of Azkaban and Ekrizdis. Ekrizdis was a dark wizard who lived during the 15th century. Very little is known about his background, including his nationality, but historical accounts consistently describe him as evil in its purest form. Unlike Voldemort or Grindelwald, who pursued power or ideology, Ekrizdis had no larger agenda. His actions were motivated solely by cruelty and the desire to inflict suffering. During his lifetime, Ekrizdis came across an uninhabited island in the North Sea. This island would later become known as Azkaban. At the time of his discovery, the island had no structures or development. Ekrizdis transformed it into a stronghold for his dark experiments, enlarging it and sealing it with concealment charms so that no one could intentionally locate it. This ensured his activities remained hidden from the rest of the wizarding world. On this island, Ekrizdis lured Muggle sailors who passed nearby. Using the concealment charms as bait, he drew them in and subjected them to torture and murder. His experiments involved the darkest branches of magic, practices that eclipsed even the horror of Horcrux creation. Witnesses to his cruelty did not survive, and records only describe the scale of his evil in general terms. Over time, his isolation and obsession with dark magic drove him to insanity. Accounts describe him as having begun his work already unbalanced, but years on the island left him completely detached from reality. His fixation on experimentation consumed him, and his fortress became a place saturated with misery, despair, and death. The creation theories of Dementors. When Ekrizdis eventually died, either from old age or a failed spell, the concealment charms he had placed on Azkaban lifted. The Ministry of Magic investigated the island and discovered it overrun with Dementors. This marked the first recorded appearance of these creatures, linking their existence directly to Ekrizdis and his fortress. However, the exact process by which Dementors came into being remains uncertain, leading to several theories. The first theory is that Ekrizdis created them directly through his dark experiments. His repeated use of destructive spells, torture, and dark rituals may have produced Dementors as a byproduct of accumulated despair and corrupted souls. Under this explanation, Dementors are an artificial creation, a manifestation of the island's darkness given form by his magic. The second theory is sometimes referred to as the Patient Zero explanation. This view suggests that one of the Muggle sailors captured by Ekrizdis was the original source. After years of suffering under his experiments, this sailor's soul was stripped of all humanity and transformed into the first Dementor. From there, the creature multiplied, either by spreading its own despair or by turning other souls into Dementors through the Dementor's kiss. The third theory comes from a much older tale recorded in Wonderbook, the Book of Spells. It describes a dark wizard named Raxidian who commanded Dementors to guard his castle. The villagers of that time defended themselves with Patronus charms. If this story is accurate, Dementors existed long before Ekrizdis, and he did not create them but merely attracted or bound them to Azkaban. The fourth theory concerns how Dementors reproduce. Some scholars suggest that Dementors multiply in the same way that fungus spreads, thriving wherever conditions of despair, misery, and hopelessness are strong. This would explain why Azkaban, saturated in the suffering caused by Ekrizdis, became their breeding ground. A fifth theory speculates that every Dementor's kiss creates another Dementor. Under this model, the soul extracted from a victim does not simply vanish, but instead becomes a new Dementor, adding to their growing numbers. The Ministry's discovery of Dementors. After the death of Ekrizdis, the concealment charms that had hidden Azkaban disappeared. This sudden revelation of a large fortified island in the North Sea drew the attention of the Ministry of Magic. An investigative team was sent to explore the site, and what they encountered inside horrified them. The fortress was crawling with Dementors. The investigators refused to discuss their full findings, a silence that indicated the severity of what they had witnessed. Within the Ministry, debate arose over what to do with Azkaban. Some officials argued that the fortress should be destroyed, as it was steeped in dark magic and considered a place of pure evil. Others feared that attempting to eliminate it would provoke the Dementors or unleash consequences from the fortress itself, which by then had absorbed centuries of misery and enchantments. Experts on dark magic warned that Azkaban might exact revenge on anyone who tried to dismantle it. They noted that buildings infused with heavy dark magic could exhibit destructive reactions when interfered with. For these reasons, the idea of tearing down the fortress was abandoned. As a result, Azkaban was left to stand, inhabited by Dementors that continued to multiply. For many years, the Ministry avoided the island altogether, unwilling to face the creatures or risk releasing them. During this period of abandonment, the Dementors bred in large numbers, feeding off the despair and misery embedded in the walls of the fortress. The institutionalization of Dementors in Azkaban. Over time, the Ministry of Magic reconsidered the purpose of Azkaban. Rather than destroying the fortress or leaving it indefinitely abandoned, they recognized its potential as a prison. At that time, smaller wizarding prisons were scattered across the country, and they posed significant security risks. These smaller facilities were vulnerable to escape attempts and sometimes endangered the surrounding communities. Azkaban, already fortified and feared, presented itself as a more secure alternative. The Ministry decided to repurpose Azkaban as the central prison for witches and wizards who pose the greatest threats. What made the plan more effective was the presence of Dementors. Instead of treating them as an uncontrollable danger, officials realized that Dementors could serve as guards. Their natural ability to suppress willpower, drain joy, and cause despair made them uniquely suited to keep prisoners subdued and hopeless. Once prisoners were confined in Azkaban, the Dementors maintained control without the need for large numbers of human guards. Prisoners exposed to Dementors quickly lost their mental resilience, becoming shells of themselves long before they could mount any escape attempts. The effect was so profound that imprisonment in Azkaban came to be seen as one of the most feared punishments in the wizarding world, often regarded as worse than death. The Dementors also multiplied within Azkaban itself, sustained by the constant flow of misery generated by the prisoners. This created a cycle. Prisoners suffered under Dementors, their despair nourished the creatures, and the creatures grew stronger in turn. By institutionalizing Dementors as wardens, the Ministry effectively bound itself to their presence, despite the long-term risks of relying on such uncontrollable entities. The Legacy of Ekrizdis and the continuing presence of Dementors. Ekrizdis left behind no followers, ideology, or political vision. His legacy endured solely through the Dementors that infested Azkaban after his death. In this way, he differs from other infamous dark wizards such as Voldemort or Grindelwald. Their actions were tied to movements and goals, while Ekrizdis' influence persisted in the form of creatures that continued to plague the wizarding world for centuries. Because Dementors cannot be killed by conventional means, their existence ensured that the mark of Ekrizdis would never fully vanish. Each time a prisoner in Azkaban suffered, each time a Dementor's kiss was performed, it carried forward the direct result of his experiments and cruelty. His creation or unleashing of Dementors placed him in a category of evil that some consider greater than Voldemort himself. The Fortress of Azkaban became permanently associated with misery and despair, an extension of Ekrizdis' influence long after his lifetime. The Ministry of Magic may have used Dementors for practical purposes, but in doing so they perpetuated the terror he had first introduced. The very idea that despair itself could be weaponized was a product of his actions. Centuries after Ekrizdis' death, Dementors remained a feared presence. They shaped the lives of countless prisoners and influenced wizarding society as a whole. Even in modern times, their ability to destabilize communities during Voldemort's return showed that they could not truly be controlled, only directed temporarily. This enduring presence underscores how a single dark wizard's cruelty left an imprint that extended far beyond his own era. If Dementors represent despair given form, then death itself is the other shadow that lingers throughout the wizarding world. Sectumsempra, a blade without a hilt, a curse without remorse. Sectumsempra is Severus Snape's most infamous creation, a dark incantation designed not to wound, but to mutilate. Its very name fuses Latin roots, sectum, meaning cut, and sempra, meaning always. In essence, the always-cutting curse. Upon casting, the spell behaves like an invisible sword, lashing deep into its victim with unseen slashes. It bypasses physical armor and ignores human hesitation. The result? Deep lacerations, rapid blood loss, and immediate collapse. To the untrained, it appears as though the victim has been violently assaulted by an invisible beast. Snape inscribed this curse into the margins of his personal advanced potion-making textbook, hidden beneath the anonymous moniker, the Half-Blood Prince. Though never taught at Hogwarts, the spell found its way into dangerous hands, most notably Harry Potter's, who used it unknowingly against Draco Malfoy. The encounter nearly proved fatal, but Sectumsempra is more than a weapon. It's a manifestation of defensive darkness, a calculated curse designed not for showmanship, but for survival. Given Snape's tormented school years, often targeted by the Marauders, it's likely that Sectumsempra was forged not in ambition, but in fear. The spell is not classified as one of the 3 unforgivable curses, yet its brutality rivals them. That distinction, that loophole, makes it even more dangerous. Sectumsempra is rarely cast in battle due to its uncontrollable violence. When used, it's a last resort, a spell of finality. It cuts deeper than the body. It cuts into intent. Vulnera Sanentur. Not all creators of dark magic provide a cure. Severus Snape did. Vulnera Sanentur is the only known counter-curse to Sectumsempra, a healing incantation so advanced it borders on magical surgery. Where common charms like Episci close surface wounds, Vulnera Sanentur reaches deeper. It reverses hemorrhaging, knits torn flesh, and halts death in progress. Its name is pure Latin. Vulnera meaning wounds, and Sanentur meaning may they be healed. The phrase itself is poetic, and the casting must be as well. The spell is not barked in urgency. It's murmured in cadence, 3 times like a ritual. First, to slow the bleeding. Second, to begin the closure. Third, to fully seal the skin. But the magic doesn't work alone. Dittany, a rare restorative herb, is often needed alongside it to stimulate new tissue and prevent scarring. Without it, Vulnera Sanentur may halt death, but not restore wholeness. We see the spell in its purest form when Snape heals Draco Malfoy after Harry's misguided use of Sectumsempra. The moment is silent, solemn, the flow of blood easing under Snape's wand, the lacerations closing like reverse time. His voice is described as song-like, almost gentle, a stark contrast to the violence that prompted it. There's a quiet morality hidden in this spell's existence. Snape did not have to create it. He could have left Sectumsempra irreversible, a mark of vengeance with no return. Instead, he wrote a cure, and that says more about him than any duel ever could. Levicorpus. Shame in midair. Levicorpus is not a spell of destruction, it's a spell of humiliation. When cast, the target is yanked into the air by their ankle, suspended upside down as though an invisible hook has caught them. Clothes fall. Dignity vanishes. It's theatrical, sudden, and inescapable, a curse designed for spectacle. The name itself is blunt, from Latin levare, to lift, and corpus, body. It translates simply to lift the body, but its meaning runs deeper in context. For Severus Snape, it was a silent weapon, originally intended to be cast non-verbally, quick, quiet, and degrading. This spell became a running joke among students during Snape's time at Hogwarts. According to Remus Lupin, Levicorpus gained rapid popularity, used so frequently that you couldn't move for being hoisted into the air. What few realized was that the inventor, the Half-Blood Prince himself, was walking those same corridors. Snape likely created Levicorpus with one target in mind, James Potter. The Marauders mocked and hexed him constantly, and Levicorpus offered a form of retaliation. Ironically, James would later use it on Snape publicly, turning his own magic into a tool of ridicule. And yet, the spell survived. Harry learned it years later, again from Snape's annotated textbook, and used it in both duels and mischief. It became part of Hogwarts culture, proof that even petty magic leaves a legacy. There's no physical harm caused by Levicorpus, but its damage is psychological. It flips the victim, strips their control, and makes them an exhibit. Not painful, but profoundly exposing. A perfect spell for someone who spent years being laughed at. Liberacorpus. What Levicorpus begins, Liberacorpus ends. This is the release spell, a silent reversal designed to return the suspended body to the ground, often without warning or grace. The etymology is again Latin. Liberare, meaning to free, and corpus, meaning body. Together, free the body. Like its counterpart, Liberacorpus was crafted by Severus Snape during his school years and intended to function non-verbally. The pairing of these two incantations reveals something crucial about Snape's spellcraft. His magic was not only meant to afflict, but also to undo. For every lash, a latch. For every humiliation, an exit. We see this spell used most notably when James Potter, after publicly humiliating Snape with Levicorpus, reluctantly lowers him at Lily Evans' request. Liberacorpus is rarely taught, rarely referenced, and rarely understood outside its original context. Muffliato. Silence is power. Muffliato is how you keep it. This charm fills the ears of everyone nearby with a soft, indistinct buzzing, like the faint hum of static or distant flies. not painful, not suspicious. Just enough to mask conversation. The mechanics are subtle but deliberate. Unlike a silencing charm which prevents sound from leaving the speaker, Muffliato targets the listener. It doesn't mute the room, it clogs the air between. Conversations can be held in plain sight, and no one hears a word. The name comes from the same linguistic root as muffle, to dampen sound, with the invented suffix iato lending a pseudo-Italian finish, as if disguising its true intent behind civility. Snape designed this charm for secrecy. Less attack, more advantage. For a student constantly under scrutiny and likely conducting potion experiments, private discussions, or covert spellcraft, Muffliato was essential. Decades later, it was passed unknowingly to Harry Potter. He and Hermione used it often, whispering tactics, scheming undetected, speaking names that shouldn't be overheard. In a school where walls sometimes listen and ghosts float uninvited, Muffliato became one of the most useful defensive tools in their arsenal. And yet, it was never taught at Hogwarts. Not officially. That's because Muffliato violates a sacred boundary in wizarding education, the right to listen. Langlock. Some silences are forced. Langlock is a jinx of immediate consequence, binding the target's tongue to the roof of their mouth, rendering them utterly unable to speak. No words, no incantations, just mute panic. Its linguistic construction is simple but sharp. Lang from language or lingua, Latin for tongue, and lock meaning exactly that. It locks your voice inside your own mouth. Snape designed Langlock with utility in mind, a restraint tool in both verbal combat and actual dueling. In a world where spellcasting depends on speech, this charm disarms without disarming. The wand stays in hand, but becomes useless. Crucially, it works on both the living and the spectral. When Harry later discovers it in Snape's annotated book, he uses it on Peeves, the school's most uncontainable poltergeist. The result is eerie. Peeves, flailing and furious, unable to jeer. A walking noise machine reduced to silence. Harry also casts it on Argus Filch, the cantankerous caretaker, in moments of mischief. But even when used playfully, Langlock carries weight. It turns speech into a vulnerability. In the right hands, it's a defensive measure, a spell that speaks volumes by removing speech altogether. The Toenail-Growing Hex. Every curse has its crown. This one wears a sock. Unlike Snape's other creations, which skew towards silence, secrecy, or savagery, the Toenail-Growing Hex is pure magical mischief. It causes the target's toenails to grow at an absurdly accelerated rate. The spell has no known incantation in canon, but its effects are unmistakable. Curling nails, shredding through shoes, and immediate bewilderment. When Harry used it on Vincent Crabbe in his 6th year, the reaction was both entertaining and mildly alarming. The charm produced what the book called very entertaining results, a rare bit of levity in an otherwise darkening world. But its absurdity is the point. Snape didn't invent this to harm or control. He invented it to mock, to embarrass, to catch his enemies off guard with ridiculousness. In a school of bullies and braggarts, there is something deeply Slytherin about a hex that turns intimidation into discomfort. Imagine delivering a threat, only to have your toenails spiral out of your boots. And yet, like all Snape's spells, it's cleanly designed. No lasting harm, no permanent mark. Just chaos, theatrically timed. Tom Riddle's Diary, 1943. In 1943, 16-year-old Tom Riddle created his first Horcrux from the murder of Myrtle Warren, killed by the Basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. Because he commanded the serpent in Parseltongue, her death met the lethal requirement for Horcrux creation. Riddle had located the chamber's hidden entrance behind a sink in the second-floor girls' bathroom, deliberately targeting a Muggle-born to echo Slytherin's purity ideals. Unlike his later Horcruxes, the diary was designed as a functional weapon. Riddle enchanted it to hold a preserved version of his 16-year-old self, capable of communicating, learning, and possessing others. This fragment could also draw victims into a fully interactive reconstruction of Hogwarts in 1943, allowing him to manipulate events and perceptions inside the memory. Riddle intended the diary to be used decades later to reopen the chamber and unleash the Basilisk again. He gave it to Lucius Malfoy without revealing its true nature, both to hide it and to test Malfoy's loyalty. Malfoy eventually slipped it into Ginny Weasley's possession in 1992, triggering the plan Riddle had set in motion nearly 50 years earlier.
And I thought your family could sink no lower.
Marvolo Gaunt's Ring, 1943. Later in 1943, Tom Riddle created his second Horcrux using the murder of his father, Tom Riddle Sr., and his paternal grandparents. He learned of their existence while visiting his uncle Morphin Gaunt, who wore an old family ring set with a black stone. Morphin revealed the Riddle's home was nearby, and that Riddle Sr. had abandoned Riddle's mother. Enraged, Riddle murdered all three Riddles in their manor with the Killing Curse, framing Morphin by altering his memory and stealing both the ring and his wand. The ring was a Gaunt heirloom and, unknown to Riddle, the Resurrection Stone, one of the three Deathly Hallows. Its Peverell crest linked directly to his own ancestry, a fact he never uncovered. He embedded a soul fragment into the ring, valuing it for its bloodline significance as much as its rarity. Riddle wore the ring briefly, but soon hid it in the Gaunt shack, using elaborate curses to protect it. One of these, a lethal enchantment, would later curse Albus Dumbledore's hand almost beyond saving. The hiding place reflected Riddle's belief in the shack's obscurity. It was both a site of his maternal heritage and somewhere he assumed no one would think to look for such a powerful magical artifact. Helga Hufflepuff's Cup, 1956 to 1957. In the late 1950s, Tom Riddle targeted Hepzibah Smith, a wealthy collector of magical artifacts and a distant descendant of Helga Hufflepuff. While working for Borgin and Burkes, Riddle was sent to her home under the guise of evaluating her collection. Hepzibah revealed two treasures to him, Helga Hufflepuff's cup and Salazar Slytherin's locket. The cup, bearing Hufflepuff's badger emblem, was famed for its enchantments to aid food production, reflecting Helga's gift for nurturing and abundance. Riddle's interest in the cup was not only its founder connection, but its symbolic rarity. No known founder relic outside Gryffindor's sword was in public knowledge. Within days of the visit, Hepzibah was found dead from poisoning, and her house elf Hoki was framed using a manipulated memory. Riddle stole both the cup and locket, vanishing without suspicion. Hufflepuff's cup became a Horcrux immediately after Hepzibah's murder. Riddle's choice signified his obsession with collecting relics tied to Hogwarts founders, each representing what he saw as magical supremacy. He eventually entrusted the cup to Bellatrix Lestrange for safekeeping in her high-security Gringotts vault, hidden under complex goblin enchantments and multiplying curse protections. The vault's defenses were intended to make the cup unreachable without Bellatrix's explicit permission, or an extraordinary magical heist. Salazar Slytherin's Locket, 1956 to 1957. The same visit to Hepzibah Smith that secured Helga Hufflepuff's cup also led to Tom Riddle acquiring Salazar Slytherin's locket. This heirloom had been passed down through the Gaunt family from Slytherin himself and was originally owned by Riddle's mother, Merope Gaunt. She had sold it in desperation to Borgin and Burkes decades earlier. Hepzibah had purchased it from the shop for her collection, unaware of its full history or magical potency. Riddle viewed the locket as both a personal reclamation of family heritage and a direct link to Slytherin's bloodline. After murdering Hepzibah and framing her house elf Hoki, he stole the locket along with the cup. The murder supplied the necessary act for creating a Horcrux, and he embedded part of his soul into the locket shortly afterward. Its concealment was elaborate. Riddle eventually hid it in a sea cave he had visited as a child, choosing a location tied to his earliest acts of cruelty against others. The locket was placed in a basin filled with a potion that caused extreme weakness, hallucinations, and thirst, guarded by inferi lurking in the surrounding waters. This combination of personal symbolism and layered magical defense reflected Riddle's tendency to anchor his Horcruxes in places of deep, often disturbing significance to his own past. Rowena Ravenclaw's Diadem, early 1970s. In the early 1970s, Tom Riddle tracked down Rowena Ravenclaw's lost diadem, a relic believed to enhance the wisdom of its wearer. Its whereabouts had been unknown for centuries, hidden by Helena Ravenclaw, Rowena's daughter, who became the ghost known as the Grey Lady. Riddle, using his charisma and legitimacy, persuaded her to reveal that she had hidden the diadem in a forest in Albania before her death. Recovering the diadem gave Riddle the final founder relic he sought, completing the symbolic set he believed would make his soul fragments almost impossible to destroy. The murder used to create this Horcrux has never been explicitly identified, but Rowling has confirmed it was committed abroad, likely during his travels recruiting followers and researching dark magic. Riddle chose an unexpected hiding place, the Room of Requirement at Hogwarts. He had learned of it during his time as a student, making him one of the few who understood its vanishing property. Inside the castle, in the room's version used for storing abandoned objects, he hid the diadem among centuries of forgotten possessions. This was one of his most dangerous placements, concealed in plain sight within the very school whose founder's relic it was, and in a magical space almost no one knew how to access deliberately. Harry Potter as an unintentional Horcrux, 1981. On the night of 31st October 1981, Voldemort traveled to Godric's Hollow to kill the infant Harry Potter after hearing part of Sybil Trelawney's prophecy. He murdered James and Lily Potter, then attempted the killing curse on Harry. Lily's deliberate sacrifice invoked an ancient form of protective magic that caused the curse to rebound. Voldemort's body was destroyed, but a fragment of his already unstable soul latched onto the only living thing in the room, Harry. This Horcrux was accidental, breaking Voldemort's own rule of carefully chosen objects tied to significant heritage. The soul fragment bonded to Harry so completely that it granted him abilities beyond ordinary wizards, including the power to speak Parseltongue and a mental connection to Voldemort's thoughts and emotions. The lightning-shaped scar on Harry's forehead became the physical mark of this link. Unknown to both at the time, this Horcrux was unique. Unlike inanimate vessels, Harry's living soul could not be dominated entirely. The connection worked both ways, enabling Voldemort to sense Harry under certain emotional extremes, but also allowing Harry to experience visions of Voldemort's actions. This link would later become a strategic vulnerability for Voldemort, giving Harry insight into his movements and state of mind during the Second Wizarding War. Destruction of the Diary, 1992. In June 1993, during the events of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Tom Riddle's diary was destroyed in the chamber itself. By that point, the Horcrux had nearly succeeded in possessing Ginny Weasley, using her to open the chamber and release the basilisk. Each time Ginny confided in the diary, Riddle's preserved memory siphoned more of her life force, strengthening his own presence in the physical world. When Harry Potter confronted the memory of Riddle, the basilisk attacked under Riddle's command. With the help of Fawkes the Phoenix and Godric Gryffindor's sword, Harry killed the basilisk and retrieved one of its fangs. Knowing basilisk venom is one of the few substances capable of destroying a Horcrux, he stabbed the diary through its pages. The venom irreparably damaged the piece of Voldemort's soul inside, breaking its magical link. The destruction caused Riddle's memory form to disintegrate instantly. This was the first Horcrux destroyed in the series, though neither Harry nor Dumbledore yet understood its full significance. A key detail is that the diary's destruction also proved Horcruxes could be neutralized without complex rituals, information that would later guide the strategy for eliminating the remaining soul fragments. Destruction of the Ring, 1996. In the summer of 1996, Albus Dumbledore located Marvolo Gaunt's ring in the abandoned Gaunt shack. By this point, Voldemort had hidden it there under powerful curses, including a lethal enchantment designed to kill anyone who wore it. The ring's dual nature made it exceptionally dangerous. It was both a Horcrux and the Resurrection Stone, one of the Deathly Hallows. Voldemort never discovered its true identity as a Hallow. He valued it purely for its Gaunt lineage and connection to Slytherin. Dumbledore, tempted by the Resurrection Stone's ability to summon shades of the dead, put the ring on in a moment of weakness. The curse spread rapidly through his hand and would have killed him within hours had Severus Snape not contained it, though the damage was irreversible. Knowing he had little time, Dumbledore destroyed the Horcrux portion immediately. He used Godric Gryffindor's sword, which had absorbed basilisk venom from Harry's earlier battle with the serpent, ensuring the soul fragment was completely destroyed. The ring's cracked stone remained intact but inert as a magical artifact. This destruction marked the second Horcrux eliminated chronologically, though Dumbledore withheld most details from Harry until the final year of their fight against Voldemort. Destruction of the Locket, May 1997. In late 1996, Harry, Ron, and Hermione recovered Salazar Slytherin's locket from Dolores Umbridge at the Ministry of Magic, but its destruction didn't occur until May 1997 during their time on the run. The locket, retrieved originally from the cave where Voldemort had hidden it, had been stolen by Regulus Black, who left a false copy in its place. Kreacher, the Black family's house elf, had been ordered by Regulus to attempt to destroy it but could not, as its defenses resisted all ordinary magic. While wearing the locket, its influence magnified negative emotions, feeding on doubt, anger, and division. This effect nearly fractured the group's unity. The destruction finally came after Ron Weasley rejoined Harry and Hermione, having left during a period of tension exacerbated by the Horcrux's influence. Ron used Godric Gryffindor's sword, retrieved from the bottom of a frozen pond where it had been placed by Dumbledore's portrait for Harry. The sword's basilisk venom permanently destroyed the soul fragment. Notably, before striking, the Horcrux defended itself by projecting illusions of Harry and Hermione to exploit Ron's insecurities, an advanced defensive reaction that revealed Voldemort's instinctive cruelty embedded even in his soul fragments. Destruction of the Cup, May 1998. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry, Ron, and Hermione broke into Bellatrix Lestrange's high-security Gringotts vault to retrieve Helga Hufflepuff's cup. The vault was protected by the Gemino curse, which caused every touched object to multiply and burn with searing heat, rapidly filling the space. Riding the half-blind dragon guarding the lower levels, they escaped with the cup, the only known Horcrux to be kept under goblin protection. Hermione destroyed it later that same day in the Chamber of Secrets. Having realized the basilisk's skeleton still lay there, she and Ron retrieved one of its fangs. Basilisk venom, being a permanent corrosive magical toxin, could penetrate the powerful enchantments safeguarding a Horcrux. Hermione stabbed the cup, and the venom destroyed the embedded soul fragment. The choice to destroy it in the chamber was strategic. It was isolated, free from interference, and provided a guaranteed source of venom without risking further combat with a live basilisk. This was also the first Horcrux Hermione personally destroyed, and its elimination marked a turning point in the battle, as Voldemort became increasingly aware that his defenses were failing. The destruction significantly weakened him, though he misattributed the cause to the loss of his forces. Destruction of the Diadem, May 1998. Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem was destroyed during the Battle of Hogwarts, just hours after the cup's elimination. Harry located it in the Room of Requirement, transformed into its Room of Hidden Things state, an enormous labyrinth of abandoned possessions amassed over centuries. Voldemort had concealed it there decades earlier. Confident in the room's secrecy and the obscurity of the diadem's legend, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were confronted by Draco Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, and Gregory Goyle. The fight escalated when Crabbe, attempting to kill Harry, conjured Fiendfire, a cursed magical fire that burns with near sentience and consumes anything in its path, including nearly indestructible magical objects. Unable to control it, Crabbe perished in the blaze. Before the fire consumed the diadem completely, Harry stabbed it with a basilisk fang he had taken from the Chamber of Secrets. The venom began destroying the soul fragment instantly, and the Fiendfire's magical intensity annihilated the remaining trace. The destruction caused a psychic shock to Voldemort, though he remained unaware of exactly which Horcrux had been lost. The diadem's elimination reduced his soul's stability further, making his mental state increasingly volatile during the final stages of the battle. Destruction of the Horcrux in Harry, May 1998. During the climax of the Battle of Hogwarts, Voldemort, unaware that Harry contained a fragment of his soul, lured him to the Forbidden Forest. Harry, having pieced together the truth from Dumbledore's memories and Snape's dying revelations, willingly sacrificed himself to ensure the Horcrux inside him would be destroyed. When Voldemort cast the Killing Curse, the protective magic from Lily Potter's sacrifice, renewed when Harry had spared Draco and Malfoy Manor, shielded Harry's soul from destruction while allowing the parasitic soul fragment to be obliterated. This unique interaction meant Harry survived a direct Avada Kedavra without being a true master of the Hallows at that point. Harry's consciousness was transported to a liminal King's Cross state, where he encountered a restored Dumbledore and the maimed, fetal form of the destroyed soul fragment. Unlike inanimate Horcruxes, the living host's soul rejected complete domination, allowing for the fragment's clean removal without destroying the vessel. This was the only Horcrux destroyed without a physical object being damaged, and it left Harry free of the psychic link to Voldemort. Voldemort, believing Harry dead, inadvertently gave his enemies a vital morale advantage when Harry returned to the fight moments later. Destruction of Nagini, May 1998. Nagini, Voldemort's snake and final Horcrux, was both a living creature and a constant companion, kept under his direct protection. She became a Horcrux after the murder of Bertha Jorkins in 1994, chosen for her symbolic association with Voldemort's own serpent-like identity and her role as a weapon in his arsenal. Unlike his other Horcruxes, Voldemort kept Nagini close at all times during the Second Wizarding War, often shielding her inside a protective enchantment known as the Protective Casing spell. By the final hours of the Battle of Hogwarts, she was the last remaining soul fragment. Voldemort, aware of the threat to his Horcruxes, confined her within a magical barrier conjured from a circle of flame while he fought in the Great Hall. Neville Longbottom, fulfilling the role Dumbledore had hinted he might play, drew Godric Gryffindor's sword from the Sorting Hat, a feat possible only for a true Gryffindor in a moment of need. Using the basilisk venom embedded in the blade from Harry's earlier battle, Neville decapitated Nagini with a single stroke. Her death shattered the final safeguard on Voldemort's mortality. From that moment onward, he was fully mortal, and his fate depended solely on the outcome of the duel that followed. Voldemort's final defeat hinged on one spell, Avada Kedavra. It's said to be unstoppable, yet the series shows moments where it failed, rebounded, or acted in unexpected ways. Avada Kedavra's standard function. Avada Kedavra, known as the Killing Curse, is one of the 3 unforgivable curses in the wizarding world. When cast successfully, it causes instant death with no physical injury. The spell is identified by a flash of green light and the sound of rushing wind. There is no counter curse, and it cannot be blocked by most magical means, including physical shielding or common defensive spells like Protego. This absolute lethality is what makes Avada Kedavra distinct from other attack spells in the Harry Potter universe. It does not cause pain or suffering. It simply ends life immediately. To cast it, a witch or wizard must have strong intent to kill and sufficient magical power. Improper execution, lack of intent, or insufficient power will render the curse ineffective. Harry's first survival. The first documented failure of the Avada Kedavra curse occurs in Godric's Hollow, during Voldemort's attempt to murder infant Harry Potter. According to Deathly Hallows, Lily Potter sacrifices herself to protect her son. This act of unconditional love creates a magical shield that Voldemort does not anticipate or understand. When he casts the killing curse on Harry, it rebounds upon him, destroying his physical body and reducing him to a shadow-like existence. The spell did not simply miss or misfire. It connected with Harry and yet failed to kill him. This anomaly is not due to a flaw in the curse, but because of a deeper magical law, ancient protection magic invoked by self-sacrifice. Dumbledore later explains that Lily's act caused her blood to carry protective enchantments, binding Harry to life so long as he remained with her blood relatives. This same protection is later sealed when Dumbledore arranges for Harry to live with Petunia Dursley. The event leaves Harry with a lightning-shaped scar, not as a physical wound, but as a residue of powerful dark magic being deflected. The curse's rebound also inadvertently creates a seventh Horcrux. A fragment of Voldemort's soul attaches itself to Harry, who becomes an unintentional vessel. This is the only known case where Avada Kedavra has failed due to protective enchantments rather than magical interference, wand interaction, or split allegiance. It marks a turning point in magical theory regarding love-based charms and is the earliest and most famous case of the curse not behaving as intended. Harry's second survival. The second irregular instance of Avada Kedavra occurs in the Forbidden Forest during Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In this scene, Harry willingly walks to his death to sacrifice himself for others, mirroring his mother's original act of love. Voldemort casts the killing curse at close range. Yet again, Harry survives. Unlike the first time, this survival has multiple layered explanations rooted in advanced magical principles. First, Voldemort is unknowingly attempting to destroy a piece of his own soul. When he made Harry into a Horcrux as a baby, a fragment of his soul latched onto Harry's body. During the forest confrontation, the Avada Kedavra successfully destroys only that soul fragment, not Harry himself. Second, the Elder Wand, which Voldemort wields, does not recognize him as its master. Its allegiance lies with Harry after the disarming of Draco Malfoy. This mismatch in wand ownership likely diminishes the spell's effectiveness. Dumbledore theorizes that because the wand senses Voldemort's hostile intent toward its true master, it cannot fully execute the curse's lethal power. Third, Harry's prior protection through his mother's blood still lingers. When Voldemort regenerated his body using Harry's blood during the graveyard ritual in Goblet of Fire, he unknowingly anchored Lily's enchantment to himself. As a result, Harry is still protected by his mother's sacrifice, now tied to Voldemort's own life. All three of these overlapping magical mechanics, Horcrux dynamics, wand allegiance, and blood protection, converge to produce the second known failure of the killing curse. Harry's body enters a limbo-like state where he meets Dumbledore and is offered a choice, to return or to move on. He chooses to return, making this the only known case where someone hit by a direct Avada Kedavra remains conscious enough to decide to live. Priori Incantatem. A third major deviation from the normal behavior of Avada Kedavra occurs during the graveyard duel in Goblet of Fire, when Voldemort and Harry's wands connect. This connection triggers Priori Incantatem, a rare magical phenomenon that only occurs when two wands share the same core, in this case, a feather from Fawkes the Phoenix. Instead of one wand overpowering the other, the connection causes the spells to backfire in reverse. Voldemort attempts to cast Avada Kedavra, but rather than killing Harry, the two spells lock in midair, creating a golden thread between the wands. This magical tether forces Voldemort's wand to regurgitate its previous spells in reverse order. The phenomenon manifests as ghostly echoes, first Cedric Diggory, then Frank Bryce, Bertha Jorkins, and finally Harry's own parents. What makes this moment significant is that Avada Kedavra never actually hits Harry. The spell is fired, but it is halted mid-flight due to the magical resistance between twin wands. This contradicts the spell's usual portrayal as unblockable and instantaneous. Instead, the Priori Incantatem effect effectively neutralizes the spell's killing power by locking the caster in a magical dual loop. Importantly, this is not due to a flaw in the spell itself, but a byproduct of wand compatibility. It reveals that wand lore can override even the darkest magic when rare conditions are met. The Priori Incantatem effect ends only when Harry breaks the connection and escapes. This instance marks one of the only times Avada Kedavra is interrupted by wand behavior rather than external defense or magical protection. It underscores that even the most feared curses in the wizarding world are still subject to the ancient laws of wand allegiance and magical interference. Snape's death, the curse not used. In Deathly Hallows, during the events at the boathouse, Voldemort seeks to eliminate Severus Snape. But rather than casting Avada Kedavra directly, he instructs Nagini to kill Snape. This is a significant divergence, not just in method, but in Voldemort's reasoning. At this point, Voldemort believes that in order to become the true master of the Elder Wand, he must kill the wand's previous master. He assumes that since Snape killed Dumbledore, Snape holds the wand's allegiance. However, Voldemort also fears that using Avada Kedavra might not sever the wand's loyalty correctly. As a workaround, he uses his snake to carry out the killing. This scene shows Voldemort's doubt in the absolute finality of the killing curse when Elder Wand allegiance is involved. His refusal to use it, despite his history of relying on the spell, demonstrates that even the darkest wizard of all time recognizes that certain magical relationships can disrupt the spell's function or outcome. Although Snape dies moments later, the nature of his death underscores the complexity of wand ownership, death, and intention in magic. It's not the killing curse that fails here, but Voldemort's intent to bypass it reveals growing uncertainty in its effectiveness under complicated magical circumstances. Thus, this isn't a case of the spell backfiring or being blocked. It's an intentional omission due to Voldemort's mistrust in its reliability when wand allegiance is in question. Fantastic Beasts, visual and functional deviations. In the Fantastic Beasts film series, Avada Kedavra is used multiple times, but its depiction differs notably from how it functions in the original Harry Potter books. One of the clearest examples comes in The Crimes of Grindelwald, when Gellert Grindelwald uses Avada Kedavra to kill Leda Lestrange. The spell is visibly slower, appearing as a projectile or beam of green energy. Unlike the instantaneous, flash-like effect in the main series, the curse takes time to travel and gives characters an opportunity to dodge or react. This slower visual style appears again in The Secrets of Dumbledore, where spells labeled or implied to be Avada Kedavra behave less like instant death strikes and more like visually telegraphed attacks. For example, one curse visibly impacts an Auror, lifting him into the air before killing him. Another deviation from the canon description of death without visible injury or delay. These cinematic choices do not align with established magical rules from the books. The film's representation appears to be influenced by action movie pacing, creating room for dramatic slow motion and dueling sequences. However, no explanation is provided in universe for this change, and no characters acknowledge that the curse is acting differently. While these portrayals may enhance visual storytelling, they introduce inconsistencies with the established magical mechanics of Avada Kedavra. From a lore standpoint, these instances are better categorized as cinematic liberties rather than canon divergences. Dumbledore's death, standard casting with unusual context. In Half-Blood Prince, Severus Snape casts Avada Kedavra on Albus Dumbledore from the Astronomy Tower. At first glance, this instance appears to be a textbook use of the killing curse. There is a flash of green light, Dumbledore is blasted backward, and he dies on impact. However, what makes this moment stand out is not the behavior of the curse, but the context surrounding its use. Prior to the act, Dumbledore and Snape had secretly arranged for Snape to be the one to kill him, both to spare Draco Malfoy from committing murder and to maintain Snape's cover with Voldemort. Despite this emotional and moral complexity, the magic of Avada Kedavra remains intact. The curse works as expected, instant, unblockable, fatal. What's unique is that Snape casts the spell without hatred or aggression, raising questions about the internal requirements for the curse to succeed. In earlier books, notably during the Unforgivable Curses lesson in Goblet of Fire, we are told that Avada Kedavra requires a powerful bit of magic behind it. You've got to mean it. Snape's casting challenges this guideline. He uses the spell not out of malice, but as part of a solemn pact. And yet, it still works flawlessly. This suggests that intent to kill is sufficient, even without anger or cruelty. The spell's function does not depend on emotional rage, only the caster's unwavering commitment to end a life. In short, while the mechanics remain standard, Snape's use of the curse is significant for expanding our understanding of what it means to mean it, and proves that even the most cold, calculated casting can fulfill the spell's deadly purpose. Only deflection during the Ministry duel. In the Order of the Phoenix film adaptation, a notable visual anomaly occurs during the battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort at the Ministry of Magic. At one point, Voldemort clearly casts Avada Kedavra, recognizable by the green light, toward Dumbledore. Yet, instead of killing him instantly, the spell appears to be blocked or deflected by a stream of water conjured by Dumbledore's wand. This depiction contradicts the canonical behavior of the Killing Curse. The film's choice to visually portray Avada Kedavra as a projectile that can be intercepted by conjured water is entirely cinematic. It introduces a form of elemental spell dueling more reminiscent of Western fantasy tropes than Rowling's described magical system. There is no textual evidence in the books that Avada Kedavra can be neutralized mid-flight by a spell, object, or natural force. This moment has led to fan confusion and debate, with some assuming Dumbledore has uniquely powerful defenses or that the spell was a different green-colored curse. However, all official film annotations and behind-the-scenes materials confirm it was intended to be Avada Kedavra. As such, this scene stands as a non-canonical exception, created solely for visual drama. It illustrates how film adaptations occasionally sacrifice lore accuracy for cinematic effect, even at the cost of misrepresenting one of the most established rules in the Harry Potter universe: Fiendfire and the limits of Avada Kedavra. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the trio confronts Draco Malfoy, Gregory Goyle, and Vincent Crabbe in the Room of Requirement. During the skirmish, Crabbe casts Fiendfire, a cursed magical fire so powerful it becomes a living, serpentine force that consumes everything in its path. This moment does not feature Avada Kedavra directly, but it offers crucial insight into its limitations, particularly when dealing with objects like Horcruxes. The trio's goal is to destroy Ravenclaw's Diadem, one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Although Avada Kedavra is the most lethal spell against living beings, it is useless against Horcruxes, which are protected by dark enchantments that can withstand most magical attacks. Fiendfire, however, succeeds where Avada Kedavra fails. It incinerates the diadem completely, destroying the fragment of soul inside. This highlights a major magical distinction. While Avada Kedavra ends life instantly, it does not destroy soul-bound magical objects or defensive enchantments crafted through advanced dark magic. Furthermore, during this same encounter, spells, including lethal ones, are attempted in chaotic succession. The extreme magical environment, filled with sentient fire and rapidly morphing architecture, appears to disrupt normal spellcasting. Although not confirmed explicitly, it is reasonable to conclude that curses like Avada Kedavra would be unreliable or misdirected in such conditions. The fact that Crabbe's own Fiendfire kills him reinforces that uncontrolled dark magic can eclipse the Killing Curse in raw destructive power. Thus, the Room of Requirement scene serves as indirect but critical evidence. Avada Kedavra, for all its feared reputation, is not the most powerful spell in all circumstances, and it can be completely outclassed by deeper, more chaotic magical forces like Fiendfire. But for all its power, Avada Kedavra wasn't the only spell to shape wizarding history. Some were invented in secret by a single man. If you thought you knew everything about Snape, think again. Here's every spell Snape invented, explained in full.